Hey guys, Lee Barnes again, Youth and Family Ministry Coach for the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. And this month, we're going to talk about Brad Fiskus and Stephanie Caro's new book, Smaller Church Youth Ministry. No money, no staff, no problem. It's an amazing read, and I look forward to telling you about it. One of the major parts of this book is the difference between a small church and a smaller church. Now, based on figures in this book, it says the average church in America is 75 members. Now, if you take Ministry Architect statistics and say the average youth group is 10% of the size of the church, that means the average youth group is 7.5 youth. And I really want to see that 0.5 youth. I think it'd be really a short guy. But one of the things to really go into with this is that there's small churches and there's smaller churches. Small churches look at what they have and go, oh, this is what we have, we really can't do much. But smaller churches look at the resources that they have and like, how can we use these effectively to do the most for the kingdom? And in this book, it really shows how to utilize these resources to reach youth and where they are and disciple them. Another great aspect that's pointed out in this book is the involvement of the lead pastor. One thing that we've seen in our smaller church ministry cohort here in the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church is that when the lead pastor is part of the group that is coming and learning, there is growth across the church. Now, what is said by this is, like in some smaller churches, the lead pastor wants to do everything. Not in this case. Youth ministry does not revolve around the lead pastor, but the smart pastor is someone that is involved in the youth ministry in all aspects of it. Another great aspect of this book is that Brad goes into detail of how to build a youth ministry. But one of the first things he clarifies is this: why do you want a youth ministry? If your youth ministry you're building is to save your church, stop. We already have a Savior in Jesus, and it's way too much pressure to put on teenagers. But what he does go into detail is how to build teams to preserve the youth ministry that's in the church and to grow it in different ways. Some of these teams are a youth ministry, Sunday night youth ministry team, a Sunday school team, a confirmation team. And I think one of the most important things is a prayer team. Each one of these teams helps intergenerational members of the church embrace their baptismal covenant so they become a part of the youth ministry also. Even if they don't show up and hang out with the kids, they can still be a part of discipling the students. Another awesome aspect of this book is when the book talks about leadership. Now, an analogy that he makes is often adults expect teenagers to come to a banquet at the church and to serve them rather than sit at the table with them and learn to lead. One of the greatest aspects I read out of this book is the importance of mentoring, that students need to learn how to be leaders by leading with adults, not just told what to do, but by being in mentoring relationships with them as they go along. Another great aspect of this book that I think is one of the most important ones there is when Brad and Stephanie embrace safe sanctuaries. One of the reasons that parents come to churches now is because it's a secure environment. And we have to have a secure environment, not only in our children's ministry, but also in our student ministry. And the main assets of that you have to look into that they bring out are faces, activities, spaces, and social media. Faces are the aspect of, are the people that the students encounter, have they been background checked? Do we know about them in the church? Activities, are what we're doing safe on campus and off campus? Spaces, what do the spaces that we meet in, do they meet the requirements of our safe sanctuaries policy? And lastly, which I think is one of the ones that gets left out the most, is social media and cyberspace. How are we interacting with our adult leaders as they interact with students online, which might be one of the times they spend the most time talking to them. One of the most popular aspects that I've seen of this book that's been talked about is the discipleship chapter. Now here's what I'd like for you to do for a second. I'm going to give you 3 words, and I want you to order them in your brain of what you think is the most important. Believe, belong, behave. Just take a second. To me, it goes like this. Belong, behave, believe. When students come into youth ministry, they need to know they belong. By being with the group they belong with, they'll learn how to behave by the students that they're with. And in that, they come to a nurturing relationships where they can believe in who Jesus is and how he can work in their lives. The last one is critical mass. Now, one thing about youth ministry that you're going to be evaluated by is numbers. And it's important to know what are good numbers and what are bad numbers. Now, good numbers are this. You leave on a trip with 7 students and you come back with 7 students. That is a really good number for you to come back with. But also, a number you can consider is a bad number. Let's say you plan the most awesome lesson for 10 people and 2 people show up. Do you still do the lesson? Of course you do. Because it shows those 2 students that they are important and they're worth your time, and they're worth God's time. Last point I want to make about this book is this. There's several books I read in ministry that have chapters called job savers for me, that when a youth worker gets in trouble, I direct them to. The last chapter of this book has 50 suggestions in it that will not only save your job, if you mention them in an interview, they will get you a job, and they will enhance the job you're doing now. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next month.